When we're reading and digesting Scripture, it's kind of important, I think, to remind ourselves that since we've heard many of these gospel messages over and over, we know how the story ends. And hopefully this gives us insight and an overview that's helpful in us absorbing the big picture and the many important parts of our Catholic faith. And we can come to a true knowledge and a spiritual maturity in our relationship with God. But if you're like me, it can also draw us into being a little bit hard on the disciples and Jesus' followers. It's kind of like watching that adventure movie that you've seen over and over before. You know how the story ends. Let's take the movie Jaws. You want to tell the girl at that opening scene, don't go swim in the ocean. It's not a good idea. Not tonight. Something may happen. Just trust me. You shouldn't do it. But every time you watch it, the story ends the same. And every time I hear the story of James and John, maybe you're like me, and hear Jesus they ask Jesus the question, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." Don't you want to warn them? You guys don't know what you're asking. Be careful. Stop and think about this. It might mean a rough life for you in the future. There's a tough road ahead. It may mean a difficult life. And Jesus warns them himself, doesn't he? And we know that James is martyred for his faith, as are the other apostles except John. John lives out his life on Patmos Island in exile. These stories are not the outcomes that James and John were looking for. And I don't think I'm the only one that thinks that question is also kind of bold. I just see James giving his younger brother John one of those, "What are you doing?" looks. What's wrong with you? And John probably shot back this glance that said, "Well, it doesn't hurt to ask." But this is a great example of what we call discipleship and what it's all about. When we as disciples of Christ, most of the time we ask things of him and we don't know what we're asking either, do we? Far from it. You see, God's plans, Jesus' call to us, is not to help fulfill some personal ambition of mine. Far from it. It's to live out the second part of what we hear in the gospel. Things should be flipped upside down. First of all, we should be the servant of all if we want to be great. To be first, we have to be a slave. If we want to be powerful, we need to become weak. If we want to serve, we should not be served. But yes, we should give our life as a ransom for many. When I came to this point in writing the homily, I stopped and I thought, how do I do that? How are we supposed to do this in the year 2021? How do we make these bold moves and live as Jesus asked us to live? Well, it dawned on me to go back to the first part of our gospel and read it again, but this time, instead of an observer, be one of the characters in the drama. So let's say that I'm James or John. What do I expect when I pray like this to Jesus? When I ask for God's help, for his grace and his interventions? Am I looking to fulfill a personal ambition? Am I looking for some selfish needs? Or am I opening and allowing his will to set the agenda? Am I prepared when I answer, I can? Am I prepared for the journey that God has ordained for me? Am I willing to sacrifice myself, to put aside what I think is important, my expectations, and be concerned with the importance of other people instead of myself? These are tough questions, and sometimes, frankly, I'm embarrassed at the difficulty that I have in trying to answer them. And how come we're surprised or confused when Jesus' answer to these people takes them in a different direction? We see that pattern unfold in the Gospels all the time, don't we? Story after story, people seek out Jesus and they ask for what they want. And when it comes to faith and pertains to their healing and relieving their suffering and those kinds of requests, their faith in Jesus' compassion and mercy moves him to say, yes, what you want coincides with the Father's will. And so he acts. But other times, like today, when the request is made about something that I want or that they want, we see Jesus trying to move that person in the direction of the Father's will. This is leading me to the answer to my question. How do I follow Jesus like he intends? By being prepared to be surprised by his answers. After I make this prayer or this request, I need to stop. I need to listen and open my mind and my spirit to be ready to be led in his direction, his plan, his will. When I make bold requests, Jesus will say to me, and he says to you, you do not know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup that I drink? Or be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized? What am I going to say? What are you going to say? The bottom line is, am I ready to bend my will in his direction or go so far as to abandon my will completely to coincide with his? When I am ready, and when you are ready to say I can, pause and take a deep breath, because hold on, in real time and in concrete ways, things are going to be different. We're going to be called on to be a servant to others, a servant to our family, a servant to friends, a servant to that person 2 rows behind you in the pews, or that guy 3 rows ahead of you, or yes, even to that stranger. To seal the deal, I have to be ready for that question. The question that James and John asked Jesus to be flipped around. And Jesus is going to ask me, David, I want you to do for me whatever I ask of you. How am I going to reply? Am I willing to say yes to be of service to others at their request? Or can I overcome that tendency that we all have and that I have to say, you know what, I'm busy. I have other things to do, but you're not on my calendar. I can't fit you in. And believe me, that excuse list can go on and on. All of this comes full circle when we're in that scene with James and John. We participate in it every day as we place our wants and needs before God. And no, it doesn't hurt to ask. But he sends Jesus as an answer to those requests to gently, and maybe sometimes even boldly, move us in the direction of his service and his will and his love. We do need to be ready to reply as Jesus does to James and John, what do you want me to do for you? And it's that simple. Just ask Jesus, what do you want us to do for you? We say it every day when we come to Mass in that perfect prayer that Jesus even used in Gethsemane. Thy kingdom come, and thy will be done.